Hi, Amos here with the RHA T20 in-ear monitors. At the recent Tokyo Fuji Avic Headphone Festival this year, I met Lindsay from Reed Heath Acoustics, who said, you have to come and try our latest model, which is just about to come out. And I promised to, and then Sunday afternoon, didn't get round to doing so until Sunday afternoon, when it was probably the worst possible time for me to listen to anything. But all the same, I was quite impressed with the sound, and I said, yes, please send me over a pair and I'll review them. So anyway, let's have a look inside the box. And hold on, where have they gone? They're not in here. I'm just kidding. I have already taken them out and had a listen because I had to write them up for the Head-Fi Summer Gift Guide. So if you want to see my shotgun review, that's in there. However, I want to show you what's inside the box because the box is quite cool. Inside we have a couple of metal plates with pretty much all the accessories already there and a good description of how they work. The metal plates, of course, have a usual range of tips, including foamies, and you have some insertable filters to adjust the sound. Pretty cool for a pair of IMs at this price range. Now, I want to explain how the IMs are special, and in that way the box does a much better job than I could possibly do waving them in front of my face or trying to scribble in the air or draw diagrams. So here we see the IM all split apart. They are a single dynamic driver pair of IMs. So in that they have a single driver that covers the lows, mids and highs. But what is unique about this design is instead of having a single voice coil to generate all that sound, it has two voice coils, one in the middle and an outer one. The outer one deals with the treble and the inner one deals with the lows and mids. And that produces, according to the box, the refined audio with a neutral tonal balance. Well, I'll say before I get into the sound that they don't have a neutral tonal balance. But all the same, it does produce a very interesting and very impressive result. Anyway, for fine tuning, they have included 3 sets of filters, basically treble, neutral, or reference I should say, and bass boosted filters. And the effect they have, if you can see clearly in this little diagram here, see if we can zoom in a bit more, the reference line is grey in the middle, and the bass boosted line shows a little black line above the bass area, and the treble boosted line with the orange line above the treble area. So that overall, you can fine tune them a bit, and if you want to see actual graphs of how this affects performance, I suggest heading over to innerfidelity.com, where Tile has measured the frequency response with each of the filters in there. Anyway, in the end, you have a reasonably adjustable pair of IMs for a fairly reasonable price, all things considered. The IMs themselves are, well, actually they have nice metal shells. Let's see if I can get the focus to play with this well today. There we go. They have nice metal shells, a little port here for the sound. So they have a little, because since the driver is moving in a small space, it probably gives it a bit more air to move. And if I take off this tip, I've got the biflanges on there. They're very, very soft tips. You can see the little filter here. I've got the treble reference ones in here, which actually have nothing inside. Put that down. And it has a little rubber flange, and you unscrew them. And if you put in a different tip as required, and it has a little shield in there to stop dirt and crap getting in there. But inside there, if focus is going to play with me nicely, you can probably see, well, there's nothing much except a little grill there. So the other ones have a little bit of foam of different types in there that will affect the sound in different ways. You could almost experiment by putting different types of foam in yourself to see if you can tune the sound. It has been done. And the cable, well, check out how chunky this cable is. This is very chunky, it's not removable, and left and right are clearly marked, which is nice. And there's a choker here, just a very basic choker. And if I unwind them, so you can see, go down the cable, around the ear, this is where has memory wire built in, so you can flex them around your ear here in the memory wire, and then these points are where the memory wire ends. So it's very well integrated in there, the memory wire. And then you still have fairly chunky rubber coated cable past the choker all the way down. And the splitter, well, focus, play with me please. There we go. Has got Reed Heath of RHA Audio has signed them, which is pretty cool. And then you have another chunky rubber cable. down to the plug, which has RHA unique plug, very standard 3.5mm, and with very nice feature of a spring on there, cable strain relief on there, which is definitely a good idea. But for portable use, that probably makes them a bit ungainly because it's sticking out. They're going to be sticking out quite a way out of your phone or DAP or whatever. That's probably the only downside. But for being robustly made, they certainly win quite a prize in that way. Very, very chunky pair of IEMs. So that leaves us on to the sound. Now, out of the box, the T20 sounded somewhat harsh, and despite RHA saying they wouldn't need any burn-in, and despite my not hearing anything unpleasant at the Tokyo Headphone Festival, I decided to give them the good old sock drawer treatment and ran pink noise and music through them for a few days, after which the sound settled down and the harshness disappeared. And after that, well, that's where it gets interesting in another way. You see, the first time I auditioned them, I wasn't getting any bass response, so I thought, what's going on here? So I put on a larger pair of tips. I normally take medium, so once I put on biflanges or some of the large tips down here, all of a sudden, that's when the bass kicked in. And when the bass kicks in, it really kicks in these. That dual coil driver really has some fantastic bass response, and sometimes it can be too much though. A friend of mine, for example, EQ'd them down by 10 decibels in the bass. That's a lot. But once that, maybe it's the small body of these that causes the issue. Maybe my ears are big enough that they can wiggle around, and maybe this particular style of pill with the angled nozzle IM tends to not always get the perfect seal with me. It could just be my ears, but all the same, I ended up with biflange tips on them. And the thing is with the tips, I usually use spin fit. Now, with every tip, depending on the design, it can alter the frequency response. Now, when I was using spin fits, they sounded kind of, bass emphasized, and depending on the nozzle selection, treble emphasized. Now, you see, with the nozzles, actually the reference one comes standard by default, and that actually has a little bit of foam inside the nozzle to reduce the treble. Don't know if you can see it there, but it's black. But the other nozzles, the bass tuned nozzle has foam in it as well. I'll put that down there. It's darker coloured and has some black looking foam in there. The treble nozzle, on the other hand, has nothing whatsoever. So it actually is just a pass through. So I guess by default they are tuned slightly towards having a strong bass and a strong treble at the same time. Now, of course, with tip selection, that's where things get interesting. Now, on the box, they say they're neutrally tuned, but obviously there's some stronger bass than pure neutral. But once I put the standard tips on, say the ones down here, which are the standard large tips, the mid-range came forward quite a bit compared to the good old spin fits. Now, spin fits, of course, have a slight constriction to allow them to spin around, and of course that will increase the bass slightly. Complies seem to reduce the treble slightly, maybe because of the lack of reflections off the foam. One other pair of interesting tips I found recently that I found really good, the good old JVC spiral dots. And they have some, I don't know how visible it is in the camera, but some little dots in there to reduce turbulence, and you get a vastly improved performance from your IEMs. Now, usefully, of course, the kind of nozzle on here is similar to Dita Audio and now ALO Audio and a few others, especially others like Talk Audio, who also have adjustable, removable nozzles or removable valves, depending on what terminology you want to use. And they'll take similar tips, which just kind of snap on there, which have that little edge in there. So, but the default give something closer to a kind of neutral sound, where the other tips seem to reduce the mid-range somewhat, and the treble, it's left up to the user to tune with these nozzles. So that made them pretty good all-rounders, pretty entertaining to listen to generally. They're not the most resolving IEMs, obviously they don't resolve a lot of micro detail. They still have somewhat of an IEM sound in that the treble isn't as clean as it is I've had on, say, other IEMs, maybe like Dita Audio or what have you, but of course those other IEMs are vastly more expensive. What you do get for your money is very, very solidly built pair of metal IEMs with very solid plug, albeit one that sticks out a lot, very nice packaging, and a very nice selection of tips. So if you like for a big bass kick in IEM and for general all-round listening, and you're not after, the most refined, micro detail micro detail resolving thing. Maybe you have a, say, mid-range DAP, say a Few X5 or Few X1 or X3, and you want something, or just a phone even, and just plugging them in there. And the phones often especially have a higher output impedance and may reduce the bass somewhat. These are pretty good. I pretty much enjoyed listening to them when I was using them. And, once they've been run in, I didn't find any really major faults at all. Using them through better equipment, of course, you get more of that bass response, and they can be a bit overwhelming in that degree. But all the same, I thought they perform pretty well for what you get. Although that's more oriented towards the physical thing and what you get rather than the physical options you get rather than being purely the best sounding. Now that there's some very, very heavy competition in that price range. So that is the RHA T20s, or T20Is if you get the version with the inline remote and mic. So again, I hope you enjoyed my video. And if you have any questions or comments, please write them below. And if there's anything I've missed, I'll answer them in the comments. And if you did like the video, please click on like and subscribe if you'd like to see more, as there's quite a bit more coming.